Chair will call to order tonight's board meeting of the Board of Education of District 201. It is January 25th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Mr. Avia? Ms. Radonio?
Here.
Ms. Steckity?
Here.
Mr. Marin?
Here.
Ms. Conover?
Here.
Ms. Hoover?
Yeah, here.
Ms. Coyle?
Here. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding visitor conduct at school events. The public hearing meeting will be called to order at 6:01 p.m. by Laura Coyle. Number one, the President of the Board of Education calls the public hearing to order regarding visitor conduct at school events. Number two, the President asks for comments from the district concerning visitor conduct at school events.
And we have representing the high school, Rainey Kaplan, our athletic director, and Kevin Weck, high school assistant principal, and they'll present the events from the night in question.
Thank you, everyone, for having us here tonight. And also thank you, Coach Kaplan, for joining me. One of the goals that we have is that we definitely want to support our students, coaches, our parents. But in that process, we definitely have to make sure that we keep a certain level of decorum. And this is definitely not an ideal situation for any of us. So I'm going to go through, I was not at this event. This is the information that was shared with me in terms of what transpired. And I'm just going to go verbatim in terms of how this looked. The parent meeting Mr. DeLippi requested happened on December 15th. In that parent meeting, we had Coach Kraft, Coach Kaplan, Coach White, Mr. DeLippi, and myself there. And we focused on a couple of concerns with Mr. DeLippi that he had with the team and what was going on. And then I also communicated with Mr. DeLippi that he should not communicate with our coaches for 24 hours after some of the games. Mr. DeLippi responded to all of us, if I have something to say, I'm going to say it. So that was, concerning to us because we'd asked politely to make sure that 24 hours to get a chance to decompress and then have a civil conversation with our coaches is helpful. Then on the 4th of January, our girls basketball team played at IC Catholic Prep in Elmhurst. Coach White saw Mr. DeLippi waiting for him after the game, where all the parents and players exited the gym. Coach White was walking to the door, and Mr. DeLippi grabbed him by the collar and pulled Coach White closer to him. Mr. DeLippi told Coach White he needed to speak with him in an aggressive manner. Mr. DeLippi demanded another meeting with Coach White and our athletic director. Coach White then reminded Mr. DeLippi that he needed to wait until the next day if he had a concern. Coach White also told Mr. DeLippi not to touch him. Mr. DeLippi left the building at that time. After Mr. DeLippi left the game, he texted Coach White, "You have absolutely quit on the girls, and it's pathetic. It's not fair to them. They deserve better." And then he said, "I want to get this done tomorrow ASAP." With that, I gathered some quotes from some statements from our coaches and some parents. From Coach White, to help understand the situation further, I have never shown Mr. DeLippi any form of aggressive behavior, language, or tone. I've not shown his daughter any aggression during practice or games. I took his daughter out of the game because we were losing by a lot and to play girls who did not get a chance to play. Also from Coach White, I am embarrassed that this situation happened for everyone involved. I wish it didn't because I look forward to getting feedback regarding my performance as a coach so I can continue to improve. But at this time, I do not feel comfortable discussing anything with Mr. DeLippi, especially since he was physically aggressive with me. From Coach Kraft, who's the assistant, we have had previous issues with Mr. DeLippi this season, even meeting with him to try to resolve them. However, since this meeting occurred, his demeanor has now escalated to physical contact. I now no longer feel safe with him being present at our girls' basketball events. As coaches, we are responsible for the well-being and safety of every player on our team. Then I'm going to go into the parent witnesses from their statements. Parent witness number 1. I witnessed the father of one of our student athletes, Mr. DeLippi, physically assault Coach Thomas White. I witnessed Coach White being pushed or shoved. And then parent witness number 2. He heard Mr. DeLippi say, this is just a joke for him. This is while the game's going on. He's not even taking it seriously. This parent also reported secondhand, his relative reported within 5 feet she turned and saw this Mr. DeLippi in Coach White's face. Mr. DeLippi was aggressive, unhappy, and unfriendly, complaining about Coach White doing a bad job. Both parents reported they appreciate everything Coach White has done for our girls program and approve or disapprove of Mr. DeLippi's behavior. From Mr. DeLippi, with the statement that I gathered from him, he said, "What incident? Never did I touch him. All I said is this, what is he doing? What he's doing has to stop," meaning his coaching method or lack thereof. Coming to practice late, I hear everything that is going on with Coach White, or sitting on the sideline laughing at the girls on the court trying their hearts out. I have a problem with that. So I'm not sure what incident you are talking about. Please explain to me. And then he also put in there, I told you guys in the Zoom meeting, I will open my mouth. So that's what I have regarding the incident that was reported to me.
Thank you, Kip.
Okay, and I just want to say that we care very much about the DeLippi family, that the students have been outstanding for us. They've been great people, and we just want the best for them.
Okay. The president asks if there are comments from the parent concerning visitor conduct at school events.
If you could go to the podium, please. Thank you.
Thanks for having this meeting tonight. Mr. DeLippi, my name is Zim. In regards of, the only thing I have a problem with is that I apparently grabbed the coach and shoved him by the collar, which in no way did I ever do that. Dielza, can you come up here so I can explain exactly what I did? Come up here. As he's walking towards me, just like how Dielza is, and I'm waiting, stand still, face me. And he approached me first, we need to talk, and I said, yes, we do need to talk, just like this. Never did I do this or push them like this. Never. I have witness, just as you guys have witness as well. Never did that happen. I say, what you're doing, this has to stop. Meaning, that game, previous games, girls that are out there trying to play, he's laughing at them. Okay, instead of coaching the girls, teaching them, he's laughing on the sideline. So it boiled over from previous games, and that's what happened at that night. For people to say that I assaulted the coach, nope, completely, this, I never, that's the only thing I did is put my hand on his shoulder, that's it. Okay, so with that being said, that's the only thing I have to say, and leave it at that. Okay?
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. President asks if there is any discussion from the board concerning visitor conduct at school events. Okay, if there's no discussion, the president then declares that the public hearing for visitor conduct at school events closed. Meeting closed at 6:09 p.m. by Laura Coyle, President of the Board of Education.
Just that, you know, Mr. DeLippi, the board, later on in the board meeting, the board will decide whether or not you'll be able to continue attending school events.
I would love an explanation. You know, like I said, I never, if you guys consider that as being assault, putting a hand or as I'm shaking somebody's hand, being an assault. That was a gesture of, hey, we need to talk, okay? If you guys consider that as an assault, and I don't, that's your guys' decision, but what Mr. Kevin or Mr. Weck read, that I physically pushed him, grabbed him by the collar, never did that happen. Never, never, never. I'm not an idiot. I will open my mouth. When I see something wrong, I will open my mouth. I told you that in the meeting. I told Kathy that as well. I've never had any incidents with all my kids at school, at junior high school or high school. My oldest played there 4 years. Didn't have any issues with that coach. With Gilzab first 2 years, never had an issue with the other 2 coaches. I let them do their job. I know that they know the game, but this one has no clue. And that bothers me a lot. Okay, fine, you're a first-year coach. That's fine. You're a first-year coach, you're learning on a job. But to sit there and laugh, come on.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
To me, that's a form of bullying the kids that are on the court. What are you teaching them? The other coach is up by whatever, 40, 50 points. He's still coaching. Why? He's got other girls that are on the bench that haven't seen the floor. He's coaching them. Why are you not coaching?
Okay,
You're
thank
sitting on the
you.
sideline going like this
Thank you,
and
Mr.
laughing
Mulligan.
at the
Thank you.
girls?
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on our agenda. The next item on the agenda is closed session. The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session to discuss personnel issues, student discipline, and other matters relating to an individual student.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes. supporting of each other, and that all the teachers are super nice.
What I love about Westmont Junior High School is that it's somewhere that I can really hang out with my friends, and I feel safe here because I can ask teachers.
Good evening, everybody. The board has returned from closed session, and the next item on our agenda is to conduct the public hearing on emergency days. Public hearing for emergency days. This is January 25th, 2022 at 7 p.m. The meeting is called to order at 7 p.m. by Laura Coyle, President of the Board of Education. Number one, the President of the Board of Education calls the public hearing to order regarding proposed resolution to adopt an e-learning program in lieu of the district's scheduled emergency days. The President asks if there are any additional comments from the members of the Board of Directors regarding the proposed resolution. President asks if there are...
questions?
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Okay.
Ask a question.
Meetings are new.
Questions or comments?
Sorry, I need to find my questions. My apologies. Okay, so, and full transparency, I asked these questions of Kevin via email prior to the meeting, so I wanted to make sure that they were, read and answered for everybody. So it mentions on actual emergency days, I paraphrase, students will learn remotely. And I wanted clarity around, is that saying that all emergency days are going to automatically become remote days? Or that the district will choose if an emergency day is a no school emergency day or a remote emergency day?
The school district would have the option. So this just puts in place the ability to have e-learning days in lieu of traditional emergency days, but it would still be up to the district's discretion whether or not to have an emergency day or e-learning day.
Okay, that was my understanding, and I wanted to make sure that it was clear that this is not necessary, this is putting a policy in place so that we can use it, but not necessarily that we will use it. And then we were talking about doing this for a couple of years to kind of put it out there as a potential test, and I think as this agenda went out, there was no snow on the ground. Right. And I was like, we haven't used any yet. And then the next day. So I was like, well, maybe we will use them this year. But this has a potential, it's in there for a 3-year renewal,
Correct.
If I understand. So that includes this school year. So we would kind of test it for this school year and the next 2 school years, and then the board would decide if it's something that we'd like to renew again. That's correct, yes?
That's correct. And also, even we've talked about, as part of our discussion, even if after the first using one, if the board, if the feedback wasn't positive, we would not have to continue using e-learning days for the next 2 years. We could just revert back to emergency days.
And that perfectly rolls into my last question, which is about the feedback. Because this is something, we are not a all high school district, we're not an all yet, we serve everybody, we're a unit district, and I think there's, I know I have significant concerns about remote days being effective for the younger students and their families,
Right.
Who all have different circumstances. But how is the district going to track, how did we do this day? Do we have a parent feedback plan or an educator feedback plan, so that we can really see, this seems very no-brainer for high school kids, but on the other side, for the youngest, right, our preschool and our kindergartners, Miller and Manning both, right? What are they getting out of the day versus an extra day at the end of the year versus, and also how easy or challenging was it to, for their families to adjust, and then also to get them the necessary tools. Because I know that we have we've got families without internet, right? And is that a barrier, right? Can we not get the family's internet, during the day? So is there a plan in place?
Yes, there is. So we would track attendance for one, and see what our attendance was during the e-learning process. And then also work completion, and then also, confirming whether or not our families had access to, the technology, the internet, We'd also would be surveying our families, surveying our staff, and then all that information would be brought back to the board for a discussion. So hypothetically, we've had a couple of incidences where we've had back-to-back emergency days, either the snow or cold. Well, we would only have the one e-learning day. The second day, if they were back-to-back, would be a traditional emergency day, because we want to gather that feedback, process it with the board to see if indeed, it makes sense to continue using the e-learning days.
Awesome. And I think there was something in there about it. There was a 30-day notice.
Right, and we did check the 30 days. The question was, because we already notified our families when, COVID and everything, and we switched to remote learning. So we did do a notification. The ROE said that on the renewal, though, it's because you have new families, and in some cases you have new staff as well, that really we should redo the 30-day notification. So the earliest that we would have our first e-learning day would be the end of February.
It would be that February 25th
Right.
date if we
Right.
went through with this today. And then my very last question was just about the timeline. Are you planning to have a different timeline for calling a remote day versus a no school day? Because no school day is 5 a.m. And that can be, I think about working parents changing their day around at 5 a.m. from my kid's just not in school day to now I have to support them in school day. So have you thought about that, or are you planning anything?
Part of the process, it's always trying to make the call as early as we can, so, and I'll roll this into some of the social media that's happening right now. But even this afternoon, superintendents, we're already communicating about the cold that's coming, right? And what does that look like? So, social media is great because it's a great way to get a lot of information out to people very quickly. The downside is sometimes you get a lot of information out to people quickly and it's not the most accurate information. But, for instance, at this time, there is no plan to be out tomorrow. For one, it's a weather advisory. Weather warning's a totally different level of concern. And so weather warning, we'd be having serious conversations, but weather advisory. So that process starts earlier in the day. As soon as those weather alerts are given, superintendents are starting to talk. If we can make the call early in the day, we do, because we understand that for our families. The 5 o'clock is only in the event that, it's difficult to call on an emergency day, even at 10 o'clock at night if a flake hasn't dropped, but, 4 o'clock in the morning, it's 2 inches per hour, so, but definitely the goal is to make the call as early as possible for our families.
Yeah, but that 4 o'clock in the morning, right, now you're talking about how do we get devices to kids if we didn't even think about it in those pieces, so. Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay, any additional comments from board members?
I have a question. In the memo that we looked at back in November, there was mention of the potential for families that did not have internet connections to have a hotspot. I don't see that in the resolution. I don't see anything about it in the resolution. What I see in the resolution is something about having participating in the program of availability of non-electronic materials for students that don't have access. So I have two questions. One is, did the idea of hotspots disappear, or?
No, we'll still do the hotspots, but as Leah pointed out, different age groups, it might be, for older students to have everything electronic might be the best way to go. But for younger students, it may not be. So that's why the resolution's phrased that way. But we definitely will also be providing hotspots to those families.
And for the hotspot portion, have we talked about the cost of that or not?
I'll have to check with Nadine, because during the whole COVID and going remote, we had secured hotspots at that time.
And so we may have enough.
So we still have those. So those would be the ones we would distribute.
Okay. And then, sorry, last thing, for the written materials that need to be distributed on that day, is that something that people would take home the day before in precaution, and if they didn't need them, they'd bring them back, kind of thing, or what's the idea here?
Right, if possible, right, there would be some notification, and it would be go home with the student, in the event of, what won't help a family is if, you know, you have to access it through email, you know,
Right,
because
because
again,
this
if
is-
somebody's
yeah.
having problems. But there's also, as part of the plan, that could happen if, you know, there's a power
Right,
outage.
I wrote it, yeah, or someone just couldn't attend school that
Right.
day, and they will always have the opportunity to make the work
Right,
up.
so they would have the opportunity to make up that work.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, that's all I got.
I have a question, and I know we talked about this when we brought this topic up before. Is there a limit on how many e-learning days we'll have or attempt?
I don't
having?
think we ever reached consensus on an exact number. I think the thinking is see how day one goes, and then
Go from there.
revisit that conversation.
And you said that we wouldn't be able to do the first one until the 25th of February at the earliest, correct? Yeah.
Right, because we want to do the 30-day notification to families.
With
The
all,
March snowstorm is the possibility.
I was gonna say, with all luck,
March snowstorm.
with all luck, we only do it once.
Right. Or not at all.
It sounds like
I don't
your
know.
plan is, if we have an emergency day after February 25th, that we're gonna try to do that first one.
Right.
Sure. Yeah,
The first day, we'll target for being an e-learning day after the 25th,
Yeah.
Cool,
and then we'll gather feedback and have that board conversation.
cool, awesome, thank you.
Yep.
All right, any other comments or questions? Okay. The president asks if there are any public comments concerning the proposed resolution. President then declares that the public hearing on the proposed resolution is closed. Hearing closed at 7:11 PM by Laura Coyle, CUSD 201 Board President. Okay, the next item on the agenda is public comment. We do have one public comment tonight. Bill Regala has a public comment. Just for the sake of posterity, I'm going to read the guidelines. Public comment is a time for the community to address the board with comments and questions. Each community member addressing the board has 5 minutes. Once you've been notified your time is up, kindly step away from the podium. Public comment will be for 30 minutes with no more than each subject lasting 20 minutes. This is not a time for the board to engage. The board will consider your comments in its decisions.
Timer, so you have to kick me off. Again, thanks everybody for giving me the time to speak today. Wanted to talk a little bit about, again, the grade level center piece from the last meeting. It was unfortunate that it's not on the agenda or discussion again for this meeting. I know it came up rapidly within 2 weeks, but it seems like we're having a lot of questions, great questions asked about e-learning that I wish we had the same level of questions asked for such a large thing that would happen for the change of grade level centers. I want to talk historically, just a couple pieces about the administration, but then pivoting more towards the board, because that's where my issue primarily lies. Just want to go back in history, Peatone Daily Journal, issue of the name of the article. This is September 12, 2007. Critics say Peatone school survey lacks full feedback. I'm going to read a couple lines from the article here, and I can send the link if you need it. Several audience members said the survey didn't get to a broad group of opinions from the community. One resident said a survey should have been sent out by mail to all community members. Superintendent Kevin Carey said there were 388 residents who filled out the survey. Our focus is to review survey results and reach a consensus on how to accommodate present and future growth in the district. Further goes on. Carey said the purpose of the committee was to make a recommendation to the Peatone School Board based on 3 options that were determined by the group and the information they had gathered for 4 months. There were then option 1, option 2, option 3. Carey said that options 2 and 3 were considered to be the top choices based on the survey findings. Just sort of seems familiar of a survey was sent, not a lot of responses were happened, and then the school board was presented with information based on a small amount of survey results. The point I'm trying to make here, that the parents were upset that large decisions were made based on not reaching out to a lot of people. Second article from March 11th, 2010 from the same Peatone Daily Journal, closed Peatone School Board meeting under scrutiny. I'll read very briefly. Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan's office is reviewing tapes of a closed session held at Peatone Community Unity District 207U Board of Education Special Board meeting February 3rd, and a letter a school principal sent home to parents about it. There's a gentleman named Calvin Pickup. He said he requested the review from the Attorney General, quote, because the school board wasn't responding to my questions about the meeting. He then followed, there's no personal vendetta. Pickup said, we're talking about my kids' education, my tax money, and my neighbors. It seems to be sort of ringing again is that there's no personal vendetta against me or any of the people that have been asking questions of this school board, but it's about our children's education, our tax money, and the neighbors that we have. And all we're asking for is an understanding of what the decision was made. Define the problem. How is it successful? There's been no discussion on it. There's been no agenda item put on it. I know there's an agenda item today of a PR committee. Hopefully something is discussed today to explain how are we letting people know about this. I know in the Freedom of Information Act, someone asked information about it. I hope maybe that's discussed today as part of the agenda. But if it's not, it's very discerning of what that happens to be. That it really feels that if it was voted unanimously to pass it, which it was, really promote it. Go out there and tell people how good it is. You should be proud of the 6-0 vote. Update the website. Kevin sends emails almost every couple weeks giving us information about the amount of transmissions of vaccines, the e-learning, all these other things. Send an email out. Let everybody know. Go on the website and let people know that this is the permanent change. There's been no discussion. Add it to the discussion, please. There's been no agenda item. Add it to the agenda item, please. I'm just some random guy that has a kid in the district. I have people reaching out to me on multiple platforms thanking me for asking these questions. I feel like I'm coming and respectfully asking for information for my children, for my tax dollars being spent for my neighbors. I really wish that we would take the time for the people in the community that come to the board and ask for information, whether via email, if there needs to be more transparency. If they're sending email about things, give the email out to the community. Please give the information so we can define if you are successful. I'm going to keep coming every board meeting and continue to ask questions of why is this the way in which we need to do it? We'd love to have this discussion, just to have the accountability of the entire community wasn't included in the decision was made. Great. So promote it. Promote it, promote it, promote it. Let everybody know. We're late, 30-day notice if there's going to be a cold weather day. Let's give them notice that the house they bought across the street from their school is no longer the school that they can send their children to. Looks like my time's up, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, let's move on with the rest of the agenda. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 11th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved. Second.
Okay, those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session of the January 11th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Education as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the consent agenda. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Number 1, personnel recommendations, resignations. Approval of board travel expenses. Approval of the January 2022 expenditure report. Ratification of the December 2021 regular payroll.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes.
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Okay, next is information and discussion items. The first one is the state of Westmont Junior High, and I know we have representatives here to talk to us.
Good evening, members of the school board, Superintendent Carey, Mrs. Anderson, Mrs. Cozart. Thank you so much for allowing us to present on this very cold evening. I am Amy Quattrone. I'm the principal of Westmont Junior High, and this is my counterpart.
I'm Jeff Bernstein, assistant principal.
Before we talk about our second home, Westmont Junior High School, I feel compelled to start out by saying thank you to all of you. It's a pleasure to be standing in front of you leading in this incredible district, but more than that, it's really, truly an honor for me. As many of you know, I went through the school district as a child. I live in the district, and I'm raising my son in this district as well. And it's no coincidence, I love Westmont. I couldn't be more proud to be leading and standing in front of you today. So thank you so very much. As I was just sitting in this audience, I was thinking about my journey behind this podium, standing in front of you, and I had to laugh because when I was in 8th grade at Westmont Junior High School, I thought I was going to be a pediatrician living in Hawaii right now. And while COVID has allowed me to be partial pediatrician, Hawaii, yeah, obviously we're not there, but at this moment in time, I'm exactly where I want to be, living my dream at Westmont Junior High. So our students, our staff, our community means everything to me. I'm 100% committed to making their experience just like mine was at the junior high. I had an amazing principal, Mr. Becker, Mr. Forsley was there, I could go on and on about all the great teachers, and that's the same experience I want for our students. There's no place I'd rather be. And so, just when you thought my sappiness was ending, I just have a few more thank yous. The first thank you is to all of you, because we at Westmont Junior High, the staff, the students, wanted to say thank you for your service. It is National School Board Month in January, so we wanted to give you a token of our appreciation. At the end of the presentation, we're going to give you something that our students made for you in industrial class. That class is led by our teacher, Russ Ali. He's awesome, and they made some toaster tongs for you and a full, I forget what they call it, but it's really cool. You can use it in the oven. And they did wood burning on it too, so it was a really interesting project for them. We know it's not an easy time to lead in education right now. Your servant leadership is really important to us. You know, it's much appreciated. We could not do this without your guidance. We couldn't do it without your support. And we're very, very aware of how student-centered you are. So thank you for that. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. And speaking of hearts, I just have to say there are no bigger hearts than our staff at Westmont Junior High and at CUSD 201, of course. From our teachers to our teaching assistants, our custodians, our school nurse, our social worker, our administrative assistants. They've shown such incredible care, concern, and just not caring about themselves, but they've just put themselves out there and have done such a nice job in this interesting time. As I told our staff on Institute Day, the way they show up every day, literally, figuratively, literally is great, figuratively is even better, every single day with smiles on their faces and their willingness to pitch in and whatever we need, it needs to be acknowledged out loud and it needs to be celebrated, and that's what I'm doing tonight. Through all the good times, as well as the adversities we sometimes face, they've remained steadfast in their commitment to our students, to your students. Your students are still cherished, they're held to high expectations, and we all wrapped our arms around them to keep them as safe as possible. I'm incredibly honored to lead side by side with our staff. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk about the focus of our presentation tonight.
Tonight we will be talking about a few key areas that make up Westmont Junior High. We will be talking about who we are as a school. We're going to be talking about our academic focus, social emotional learning and how that impacts our students, data, and then the future of our school as well. And we'll be presenting a video that hopefully the audio and everything will be working, but to show how student-centered and focused we are at Westmont Junior High.
Work hard, be kind. 4 words that encapsulate who we are at Westmont Junior High School. And while we have all heard these words before and this quote before, I have to give credit to our instructional coach, Brian Johnson, for asking me the pointed question of, what are your expectations for our students? And it all came down to these 4 words: work hard and be kind. And I see it on a daily basis, you know, from our 7th grade student, Rhea, who had a fundraiser for her peer, Alex, to our student, Sean, who genuinely cares about others, and every time he sees me in the hallway, he smiles at me, asks me how I'm doing, and he actually cares how I'm doing. It's a wonderful thing. To our students in Mr. Gonzalez's class who debated a topic in such an open-minded and honest way that many of us adults could take a cue from. And finally, to one of my boys who has made a lot of poor choices in his past, but who's accepted the support and the love of all of our staff members, and he's now embracing his goodness. And that's the WJHS experience of working hard and being kind. Knowing that both Jeff and I are new to leadership this year at the junior high, we thought it would be important for us to not only talk about who we are as the school, but who we are as leaders. In other words, our core beliefs. Most important to us are our connections and relationships with our students, our families, and staff. They are everything to us. We truly believe that we can get through anything and we can move mountains with the solid relationships that we built and the future relationships that we're going to continue to build. Second, but really in no particular order, is our belief in staff efficacy and student personal agency. I know these words have different connotations and different meanings in different professions, but to us, collective staff efficacy really is about our shared belief in our ability to positively impact students. Student personal agency goes hand in hand with us, as with our students having an active role in learning through voice, choice, and process. We are big believers in wanting to create environments in which students and teachers can embrace both successes and failures without punishment, productive struggles. Students need to be self-reliant and resilient. They need to truly believe they're responsible for their own successes and outcomes. And finally, joy. A few years ago, the Illinois Principals Association asked me to present a TED Talk, or it's called an Ignite speech in the education world. And they told me I could speak about any topic in education, and I chose joy in schools. That's what's super important to me. We know the importance of how it feels when you walk through those doors. And we want our students to feel, and our staff, to feel joy every day that they come to us. Again, that's the Westmont experience, and the Westmont Junior High School experience, and we want them to remember us fondly as they leave our doors, and also celebrating one another. So, let's move on and talk about the heart of our presentation tonight, which is our students. They deserve a student-centered experience, both in academics and SEL, and that's what we're gonna give them every day. So we're gonna start talking about our academics and programming.
All right. For a small school, we offer a variety of programs to serve our students' needs and desires. This year marks our first dual language program that will be graduating at Westmont Junior High. To honor their work, they will be receiving a purple cord, at graduation to celebrate their accomplishment. Instructional Lit and Math is for students who have specific goals, and they will be working on those areas. Honors Literacy and Math, are for students who met the required criteria in 7th and 8th grade only. STAR is our Student Targeted Achievement with Rigor class, is an extension of the class. It is a class where students can meet with their teacher. They can get their homework done. They can build those positive relationships with their teachers, but it's just a place to gain access to more information from teachers. E-Period, which is an enrichment class that focuses on students' interests, like Mr. Cassiello's Future City competition. Smart Service with Miss Rue, which focuses on repairing and building students' Chromebooks. And then also the Game Maker class with Mr. Clark, which is building video games, which is actually really cool. And we've changed up intervention this year. We are now using the acceleration model in math in a more proactive approach rather than reactive. Math teachers are using pre-teaching strategies to help students have a better understanding of material before they see it. Preliminary data showing that it's working well, and students are reporting that they feel more comfortable in class now. We've also changed our reading intervention class to incorporate Fontes and Pinnell's LLI program. We did a lot of research and spoke to many schools and have found that this program has fidelity while accelerating children at a faster rate. New to us this year is our Coding Exploratory class, the Amazon Future Engineering class taught by Ms. Kirkwood. We are one of the first middle schools in the area to offer this class through Amazon, and we're really excited to have it as part of our STEM program. These goals are for the entire academic 21-22 school year. We will be discussing the data later on in the presentation, but I know these goals that we are shooting for. We recognize that they are lofty, but they have high expectations here at Westmont Junior High, and we are committed to trying our best to reach them. In both math and literacy, 76% of our students will remain or increase their national norm percentile on the iReady assessment. 76% of students will meet their typical growth goal on iReady, and 20% of our students will meet their stretch growth goal on iReady.
So let's talk about our first piece of data. This is the IAR test from last spring. So these were our students from the spring. We, in math, exceeded state scores in all 3 grade levels, and the 8th grade exceeded over 10%. In ELA, we exceeded state scores in both 6th and 7th grade, and then the 7th grade exceeded over 10%. Our 8th graders fell a bit short of the state average last year, and we've been looking into why this is occurring. We've looked at trend data in the cohorts, we've looked at the different, the previous grade level scores, I should say, and the participation rate. We looked at iReady scores, which are usually an indicator of how our students are performing on IAR, and they aren't matching these scores. There is a discrepancy. As a matter of fact, 60% of our 8th graders who left us last year went to the high school either meeting or exceeding reading expectations in iReady. So there's definitely a discrepancy between this IAR data. To me, it's not a pattern, it's a one-time thing. So, but just know that we are looking into this to see what actually happened with that data. But again, our iReady data suggests that our students were right on track as they went to the high school. And this, you can just click through this. This is just in bar graph form, what I just talked about. And this iReady data, Jeff's going to talk about it, but it might look a little bit different in your presentation as the school board because we changed up some of the numbers due to the new test that had just come to us. So.
I know everybody likes awards. If you focus on the top right corner of the presentation, niche.com, which is a market leader in connecting colleges and schools with students and families. It's an in-depth profile on every school, and over 140 million reviews and ratings have been given on the website. We have a niche.com award. We have an overall grade A, and we're in the top 13% of all middle schools in Illinois. And just to go over some data, math, 72% of our students are on or above grade level. 73% of our students are on or above grade level in ELA. Am I in the right one?
Nope, you went past it. That's
Sorry,
okay.
I went back. Math, 37% of our students met their 100% growth goal. And then for ELA, 48% of all students met their 100% growth goal.
And this is for our data that the students just took, the iReady test that they just took. Our Illinois Science Assessment information is next. You are right. This is back from 2019, but we wanted to add it in there because we always do every year. But we haven't taken the Illinois Science Assessment due to COVID. So back in 2019, as you can see, Westmont Junior High School had 70% of the students meet or exceed in this assessment, so that's quite an accomplishment for us. And now we're going to move on to talk about our social emotional learning programming.
So I talked about STAR class. We also have social work groups. We have our principal lunch groups, teacher mentoring, peer mentoring, our class catalyst program, our student service learning commitment hours. In the past, students would need 36 hours to graduate, but due to COVID, we're bringing that down to 15 hours. And then we also have our extracurriculars, girls and boys basketball, co-ed wrestling, cross country and track, boys and girls volleyball as well.
Along with those SEL programs, we know how important it is for our students to be in the community and the community to come into the schools. So some of the things that we've still been able to maintain throughout COVID is having our students paint murals on the walls, or on the windows and stores on Cass Avenue. We've created a Junior Citizens Police Academy with well, he was here, school resource officer Durst. We created that together, and the students had a 6-week course on everything from forensics and crime scene analysis to, how to make a 911 call. So the feedback from them, they loved it. We're going to do it again every year. We had about 30 students. And the great part was we had students not only from Westmont Junior High, but we also invited the other side of Westmont, this Marker School District, and so the kids could, meet each other and possibly form relationships with students outside of our school. We also are still having guest speakers come in. We have our speakers corner where the community comes in and our 8th graders give speeches to them. Westmont First Committee is a village committee that I'm a part of, and so in the future, when I'm able to, I want to bring our student leaders into that community to have a seat into that community committee to have a seat at the table. Also, the village and the school district, I'm sure you know this, we've commissioned Dr. Bursek, our junior high 6th grade literacy teacher, to write the CUSD 201 historical book. And so we're going to have a big event in which we honor her and maybe hopefully sell some copies of those books. And then finally, I'd like to thank our PTO for our fall spring beautification. We've never done that before. We had parents, we had students, and myself. We all met on a Saturday and we beautified the front of the school. I hope you're enjoying it. It was a great time, and we also had the PTO get us a sponsor so we could have we have things in the winter time, we're going to have things in the springtime, and then every season change up the outside of what that looks like.
And moving on to our 5 essentials data from last year. Overall, we received a well-organized rating for our 2020 school year. We scored highest in math instruction, academic press, teacher expectations, parent influence on decision-making, collaborative practices, and academic personalism, which is teacher connection and support of our students.
And then finally, what does the future look like for WJHS? Well, we know that esports is a very, very popular sport that's coming into play at the middle schools and high school, and it is just really about video game competition in a safe environment. And so that's something that we want to look into and bring to the schools in the future. We know we have a lot of students that are interested in that. We're also looking for more opportunities for tech education, one of those being video announcements rather than just announcements over the loudspeaker, but there's so much more to that we're looking into that's out there for kids, maybe being commentators at some of our sports games and chess, our chess matches. We have a lot of different ideas that we'd like to implement. We also are looking so forward to opening up our SSLC opportunities for the students, and with that, we're also looking forward to creating community internships with those hours, but also with students who are interested in everything from business to the trades. We have a lot of connections to the community at our school, and so we have people that own businesses that have said they're already interested in this. So we're looking forward to that. Also, more e-period community involvement. Prior to COVID, we had a lot of parents, we've had community members, we've had community officials come in and teach our e-periods for us. And so we want to bring back that concept as well. And then finally, articulation with high school students and elementary students, not just with our staff, but also with our students. We're looking forward to our students working with the high school students and the elementary students in different ways. Finally, we would like to wrap up, hopefully this works, we'd like to wrap up our presentation with a glimpse inside Westmont Junior High School. This video was created by one of our students, Kyle Johnson. He's an 8th grader. He's amazing at tech. He actually helps to lead our smart service e-period that Jeff was speaking about.
All right.
And here we go.
Everybody ready?
Are you ready?
Yes. If you just let me click play, and here we go.
What do you love about Westmont Junior High? My favorite part about WJHS is sports, because you're not a team, you're a family.
I love WJHS because I like the learning environment here and all the teachers and people.
What I like about Westmont Junior High School is the teachers and what we learn. The thing that I love about Westmont Junior High School is that the teachers teach us in ways that we can learn productively. The thing I really like about Westmont Junior High School is that I get to meet new people. What I love about junior high is the fact that everyone's so supporting of each other and that all the teachers are super nice.
What I love about Westmont Junior High School is that it's somewhere that I can really hang out with my friends, and I feel safe here because I can ask teachers questions and get help I need.
I love Westmont Junior High School because of the academic expectations that they hold and the support you can get from the teachers.
I like Westmont Junior High because it has a lot of good opportunities for me, like band, and choir. And I like coming to school to see my friends and learn.
Our speeches, our mental health speeches and literacy.
In literacy class, we performed speeches about mental health here in the media center, and I love that because you can really see the audience's reaction to that, and you could get feedback from people here in our community.
One learning experience I had at Westmont Junior High was being able to do debates in Mr. Cassiel's class.
My favorite learning experience that I've done in class is probably the debate in social studies. It was a really fun debate, and I got to interact with other people, and I enjoyed it.
One of the experiences is very memorable for me is being at the cafe. I'm a worker there. It's just a really fun place to be, a place to relax, get ready for the day, especially in the morning where you get to meet all your friends. It's a really nice place to be in the morning.
I think my favorite memory in Westmont Junior High is the time I signed up for industrial arts. Industrial arts was very fun because I actually got to do stuff that I thought I would never do, like cut wood, make projects. It was very entertaining for me because I like to do hands-on stuff.
I like science class because we do a lot of stuff that we have to use our hands and a lot of hands-on activities.
I love Westmont Junior High the most because of the people who come in and out of these doors every day. Cheers, WJHS.
Thank you to Kyle Johnson. That was really well thought out and just lovely. So I'm glad you got to see a glimpse of Westmont Junior High. Again, thank you for allowing us to be here tonight and presenting about our students and our staff. We do have a little present, so would it be okay if I approached you to give them to you?
Absolutely. Does anybody have any questions for them
questions,
first
yes,
or
I'm
comments?
sure.
I have hopefully a super quick one, just clarification, but also just wanted to say thank you so much. This is awesome. When we met at Westmont Junior High, I can't remember if it was this school year or last. It's all kind of blending together now.
Yes, I remember.
But I remember learning a little bit about it, and I think what the presentation highlights too is how much experiential learning there is at Westmont Junior, and I think that's how students learn now. So it's just super cool, and I think you guys are doing amazing things there. Just regarding data, can you just clarify IAR versus iReady, and is one like more important than the other in terms of future success in high school? That was my only question.
I don't think one is more important than another, but to clarify, the IAR is the state assessment, Illinois Assessment of Readiness, and that is the state test that all students are given, K through 8. Am I correct about that? K through 8, yes. So that's the IAR. iReady is an assessment that we use internally, whereas IAR is put on great schools and information on our Illinois school report card. We use our iReady data We do 3 benchmarks per year, and it's more in-house information for us. We use it to progress monitor students' growth. We use it in intervention. So it's the tool that we use to inform our instruction throughout the school year. IAR is the one test during the spring that is reported on the Illinois School Report Card.
Great,
That's
thank you.
once a year. Once a year. in the
Once a
spring.
year. So
And-
far, they may change that.
Did you have more?
No, that's it, thank you.
And keeping with that, you mentioned that you were looking into one of the data points that you weren't,
Yes.
this was the ELA for 8th grade?
Yes.
Okay. And have you contrasted any other similar school districts and their data?
Yes, that's a great question. So I belong to a PLN, a professional learning network, so we have been talking about scores, and everybody has seen, of course, some areas of improvement, right, in their data. This seems to be an outlier for us at Westmont Junior High School. I couldn't compare it to other schools because some test scores had gone down for other, and some had gone up for others. It's perplexing to us because our iReady scores showed us that, that our students were ready to meet the expectations of the high school. So it's one of those, I just don't think it's a pattern. We've never seen that before, and so we are really trying to figure out, what happened and use that data point to drive our instruction in the future.
So when was this test taken?
Spring last year.
Of last year, thanks.
And following it up, you said that you have data from those same students in the high school level? And
Yes.
where does it show they are now?
Oh, at the high school right now?
Yeah, do you have data from
We don't
those
have
students?
data from
Okay.
that because they don't take the IAR over
Okay.
there, so it's different tests. So it would be comparing apples to oranges.
Okay,
Oh,
but
it's on-
anything that shows like where they are, I don't know if they take any tests by this point in time to say that how they're doing, do you have any?
Well, I believe that they take, Mr. Carey, you might have to help me out with this. Did they take the SAT?
Yep.
So that
We don't have
data,
that.
we haven't talked about, we haven't articulated yet, but we absolutely will.
Because they would be freshmen right here.
Right.
They would be
Right.
freshmen this year, yeah, okay.
Yeah, at the high school, the state test is the SAT. So at the high school, if freshmen, sophomores, juniors, they take practice tests as progress monitoring.
I just want to give a comment. I know one area on community outreach that I experienced is Speaker's Corner. I think
Yes.
that was it, where I want the board to know and to tell you that I was amazed by your I think they're 8th grade students who did a talk. It's kind of in the mental health realm, but they did I would say all of them did a fabulous job. And even just the act of standing in front of strangers they don't know to give a speech at 8th grade, and they're very articulate. They showed that they did research and they cared about what they were speaking about. I kind of wanted them to be in front of other audience to give their speech on mental health and the need for it, and so I want you
Thank
to
you
express to
so
you that I
much
was
for
proud of
saying
your
that.
students. They did a fabulous job.
Thank you for that.
Every year, it's so impressive, and we have to thank Ms. Walsh for that. She goes out of her way to make every detail count in the way the students present and what they present, but also in that day. So, thanks, Ms. Walsh.
I guess my one observation, this is my first year with a child at the junior high, and I know we've talked about a couple of different things here, but including test scores and, the outreach, et cetera, I think one of the most special things about Westmont Junior High, from what I've observed and my personal experience, is just the level of care for the students as whole, the whole student. Is just really impressive to me, and I think junior high is such a pivotal time for students, that both from an emotional standpoint and from a mental standpoint and physical standpoint and an academic standpoint. So like the ability of our program and under your leadership to balance all of those things for our junior high students in a way that is really productive and meaningful is truly impressive. So just wanted to congratulate you on that.
Thank you.
That means a lot.
I wanted to thank you for coming to give the presentation. It was very informative, very interesting. I do have one question.
Sure.
For the academic goals, You had on here 20% of students will meet their stretch growth goal. Can you explain what
Yeah,
that is?
that's a great
briefly?
question. So in iReady, they give different goal bands. And so they have the traditional growth, you know, that we want all of our students to reach 100% of their growth. But then beyond that, they have another category, and that's their stretch goal. And so that's where we would love for them to be. That's the really, you know, the high expectation, the highest of expectations. So for so many of our students to already meet that stretch goal in the winter benchmark, it's pretty impressive. So we are really, really proud of that, because we look for the stretch goal really at the end of the year. That's when most of them meet them, but a lot of them have met that right now in the winter.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you guys. It's always awesome to see inside the schools, because, you know,
Yes.
drive by them all the time. It's like,
Yes.
ooh. There's stuff that happens in there. And the junior high is a really good, and that first time that we were in it last year, I was like, oh, this is nothing like my junior high at all. So it's really wonderful to see it with students in it, and to hear from the students and just exploring. I think there's some really cool stuff there. The kids fixing the Chromebooks and the cafe up there, like it's awesome. So thank you for sharing it, you know, and celebrating some really cool things. So appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I love the student who talked about the industrial arts program being
Yes.
really cool. But my daughter took that class first semester, and she, like, every day it was like, Mr. Ollie this, Mr. Ollie
Yes, Mr. Ollie, absolutely. He's the one that helped the students make the presents. So this is a great way to segue into that.
So I can attest. I'm fixing a chair right now. I'm fixing 2 chairs, actually, and I am using the skills from my junior high industrial arts class. Absolutely.
Awesome. I know. I walk in there every day, and I'm like, oh, the smell. It brings me right back to junior high. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yay.
Y'all had your cool stuff in junior high. I was in one building for 8 years. Thank you.
I mean, if it helps you feel better. Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, I was tortured by all the kids in junior high. Does that make you feel better?
Oh, I was a boy.
I had industrial arts.
I was a
I
Catholic
have
school
one
boy
of
all
these,
my
but I'll
life.
take another one.
One girl just had a huge chunk of hair on the side of her head.
All right, well, thank you, Amy, and thank you so much. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The biggest chopsticks I've ever
Awesome.
seen.
Thanks, you guys. So the next item on the agenda is the update on the 21-22 school year.
I had a girl get cracked in the face in high school at a golf club. She was too close to the side when we were doing the swing. Broke her nose.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, where am I here? All right, here we go. All right, so as always, each of our board meetings, we provide our community with an update on how our school year is going during the pandemic. And I know I review a lot of information that we share every week, but just again, in case somebody hasn't been watching our board meetings. But our focus is always the health and safety of our students and staff. But we're also prioritizing the full-time in-person learning, and that's something that we've been able to maintain throughout this year. And especially since we returned from break, that's our staff stepping up and doing some amazing things and really chipping in to make sure that we can cover all of our classes and make sure that we can keep our schools open, that we make sure that we're providing meaningful, engaging academic experiences. We're focused on the social emotional needs of our students as well. Consistency and stability for all of our students and staff. And then we are always providing professional learning opportunities. DuPage County still maintains a high level of transmission. The numbers look a little bit better than what they did just last week. We have 1,345 new cases per 100,000, and the positivity rate is 15.98%, and this is as of last Friday. My guess is it probably has trended a little bit lower. You can see the trend, and again, rolling back to October where we were at. on the positivity rate and where we currently are, but definitely better than we were at our last board meeting. So it's starting to trend down, and all indications are that we've kind of peaked, and now we should see those numbers come down, which is a good thing. And then if you look at our new cases per 100,000, that same trend, we really peaked January 7th, that board meeting, and the numbers have been trending down. So that's good to see as well. So hopefully those numbers will continue to improve. In terms of our district data, our certified staff who have tested positive since our last board meeting, we've had 6. For the entire school year, we've had 20 certified staff. And then for our non-certified staff, since the last board meeting, we had 4 test positive. And we've had non-certified year-to-date 13. Because our staff is fully vaccinated, we haven't had to worry about quarantining and close contact, so that's been a positive. And then our student numbers, again, no surprise that we're, just like everybody else, we're seeing more and more positive cases. But you can see where we're at since the last board meeting with symptoms for each of our buildings, and then year-to-date, the COVID symptoms, and then testing positive. We had, since our last board meeting, 18 students at Manning, 3 students at Miller, 17 at the junior high, and 10 at the high school. And the nice thing again is that, first of all, we're not seeing a lot of close contacts, and those weren't always like in the same classrooms, so they're spread out throughout the building. And you can also see that at the junior high, there are 18 close contacts, but 7 of the students were vaccinated, so that meant that those 7 students could remain in school. And at the high school, we had 16 close contacts. We had 12 students that were vaccinated, and so only 4 students need to be excluded. So the importance of being vaccinated and being allowed to remain in school. And then it was asked the last board meeting, kind of if we have a handle on our vaccination status. So you can kind of see where our enrollment is. So Miller has 193 students, 35 are vaccinated, so 18%. Manning is about 21%, the junior high 14, and the high school 10. I will tell you that I'm pretty confident this is low because, you know, the parents voluntarily have to, you know, provide that vaccination card to the district and upload it. And so, you know, not everybody's comfortable doing that. But at the same time, as you get a positive case, then parents are producing the vaccination card. So we're going to continue to encourage parents to submit that to us so that we have it on file. So that way we don't have to necessarily make that contact. We'll know right away. But that kind of gives you an idea of the vaccination rate.
I can guarantee you're up at least one more because I'm guilty.
I'm guilty too. Ours hasn't been submitted
Somebody I have
yet.
to
Like,
log
I
into
think that
Skyward,
the
and I'm
numbers
like,
are much
"Oh."
higher than that's representing, I hope. Just people are slow to get their...
Definitely higher.
Well, it's higher than that, I'm sure. And then again, the CDC transmission levels, that's what that high level is based on. And the 2 criteria, those new cases per 100,000 and the positivity rate. Those are the 2 things that we look at. Currently, I can tell you today, masks are required for students and employees. There's a governor's executive order. We're maintaining our 3 feet physical distancing, and then masks are required on buses. And the contact tracing has to be done when students are less than 3 feet. And then again, currently, if schools were to defy the executive order, these are the potential consequences for schools. There has been an adjustment in the exclusion period for students recently. First, the CDC updated, then the IDPH, and then it trickled down to schools. And so, again, the close contact hasn't changed. That's still the 3 feet, 15 minutes in a 24-hour period, or unmasked 6 feet. But what has changed is really the number of days that you are excluded. And so basically, if you are, you test positive for COVID now, after 5 days, if you're fever-free, diarrhea, no vomiting in the last 24 hours, you can return to school if your symptoms are improving. There's also the option for unvaccinated students to test to stay. And we've started that program this week. And so if a student's unvaccinated, they're a close contact. If the parents opt for it, their child would be tested on days 1, 3, 5, and 7. And that has to be done at school. And our nurses were trained on Monday, as well as our one of our secretaries in each of the office is also considered a health aide. So that person was trained as well. So that we'll be able to do those trainings. North Shore then picks up those samples from us, they process them, and within 24 hours we get the results of those tests. And so as long as they continue to test negative, they remain in school. Vaccinated students 18 and over, now you need a booster for a close contact to remain in school. But if you're 17 or younger and you have the 2 doses and you're a close contact, you can remain in school as long as you're symptom free. You can remain in school. And so the number of days has changed a little bit. Before it was 10 or 14 days that students were excluded. And again, the Page County Health Department is supporting Test to Stay. That's why we've implemented our program. By the way, the North Shore testing, Shannon was sharing the numbers with me. Prior to break, we're probably like 85 to 89 students were testing per week. After break, it jumped up to 135, and now we're consistently about 150 students, or 150 people, some of it's staff. And again, we're getting those results pretty close to 24 hours. But they do prioritize the schools, and again, that's a voluntary basis. We cannot test a student without parent permission. So parents have to provide that permission. But every week I include that. If you want your child to be tested every Monday, you have that opportunity. We are hosting another vaccination clinic. This will be on Saturday the 29th at the junior high. This is with Westmont Pharmacy. They're doing the vaccinations, and it'll be from 9 to 1. And just real quick, I don't have a slide on this, but I'm sure many of you have heard about the possible lawsuit that's in Sangamon County, that it's challenging the governor's executive order to mandate vaccinations and mandate masks in schools. And then there's also 100 and some school districts that also are involved as well, and that's challenging the school district's ability to mandate masks and vaccination. And so we're hearing that the earliest the judge will make a ruling is Friday. But there's 3 potential directions that could go. The judge could rule that the governor's executive order, he overstepped his bounds, and he doesn't have the power to mandate masks and vaccinations, but school districts are fine. The other possibility is the judge has a ruling that again says the governor overstepped, and these school districts that are named in the lawsuit also cannot mandate masks and vaccinations, but other school districts in Illinois at that time are fine. But you can anticipate what would happen if that was the ruling. Probably a lot more public comment at school board meetings, and then probably other lawsuits of a similar nature, you know. And the third possibility is that the judge rules that the governor overstepped and all school districts do not have the power, not just the ones in the lawsuit, but all school districts in Illinois can't mandate masks. And so if that happens, obviously we'll be talking to our attorneys, but you know, some of the things that we're currently able to do, you know, the potential fallout or unintended consequence, I guess, is right now we're able to maintain 3 feet of social distancing because we're requiring masks. If it reaches a point where school districts can't require masks, then school districts may have to go back to the 6 feet social distancing. And if you remember from last year, we can't necessarily accommodate all of our students in our buildings at 6 feet. And so now you're looking at AV schedules and different things like that. The other thing as well is right now we're able to bring students back as early as 5 days for being a close contact, or if they test positive. Well, if we go to a situation where students are not masked or, it's optional, we very well likely would go back to that 10, 14-day exclusion. So, districts are watching this to see what the rulings will be. There will probably have to be some collective bargaining with our bargaining units as well, because they have a vested interest in their work environment and how safe it is. And so I'm sure they'll want some assurances. So again, we're all waiting on what happens with these lawsuits. And that'll be Friday is the earliest that there should be a ruling.
So Kevin, just to flush out the timeline a little further, say there's a ruling on Friday. Is it like the ruling goes into effect Friday and Monday, like the scenario where we have no, the school district can't mandate anything. If that scenario is the case, does that go into effect immediately, and the following Monday we have to be prepared to implement a different scenario, or?
It depends. It depends on the ruling. So if there's a grace period, which that's what you would hope for, if that ends up being the ruling, then you would hope for that there would be a certain date that districts would have the opportunity to put in place plans, pending for that change. But our admin team will be discussing it this week, so that we kind of have an idea of what we will do depending upon what the outcome is.
And we should probably plan that there is a strong potential for a special board meeting sometime in the next.
That was going to be my next question.
There
If we should just
there could be
put something on the
because
calendar.
right now technically, our district, we approved a return to school plan before the governor's executive order. So our district opted for a mask requirement outside of the governor. So that's why if they just rule the governor, our district would be okay. Some districts are doing it only because there's a governor's order. And so if the ruling is the governor's order is overreaching, then those districts will have to respond. But we would be okay in that instance. Is if it's a more broad ruling, then that's when we'll probably be having special board meetings. And
Kevin, I know you spoke about mandates for vaccines. Are there, I wasn't aware, but are you aware that there are school districts that do mandate vaccines?
There are some school districts are mandating vaccines for athletics, and then for employees, we mandate vaccines or a testing program.
So just to kind of go way back in the day, you mentioned about the 6 feet versus the 3 feet. And I think it's probably appropriate to kind of go back, because that was now nearly 2 years ago that we talked about that last, and really talk about kind of, that meant at our high school, we were on an AB schedule.
Right.
At our junior high, we were at an AB schedule, and it was what kind of restarted the talks about grade level centers, because Manning could support the 6 foot distancing, but Miller could not. And so Miller was going to be at an AB schedule or even less, and Manning would be able, so that was that was the reason that we did the swap and then reinvigorated that conversation. So that's, if worst case scenario happens, that's what we might be talking about again, is AB at the 2 upper levels.
AB at the 2 upper levels. If you remember, the challenge at Manning and Miller was lunch.
Yeah.
Maintaining 6 feet at lunch. And so that's...
And they're both using their gyms again.
Right. So that would be the question, is if we could still have the same length day for Miller and Manning if we had to go to 6 feet across the board. Because right now in the classrooms, the kids are not 6 feet apart in the classrooms.
Yeah.
So they were utilizing other spaces like their cafeteria in order to accommodate it.
Are they 6 feet apart at lunches still, or just 3 feet apart right now?
At Manning, they're 6 feet apart at lunch. At Miller, I think it's less than 6. It's like between 3 and 6.
They are 3. Well, yeah, that's because I think that they did, like, you can be less than 6 feet
Right,
apart
right,
when
it
you're
can be.
eating now. And
Right.
so I think we need to talk a lot more about this, because the other thing too, I know we decided on masks, but I think we also talked about listening to guidance from CDC, IDPH,
Right,
and
right.
all of that could change very soon too, because I do think we're sort of in this transitional period in some ways with this latest variant and more people getting vaccinated. And I hate that we might have to decide on this, but we might have to reopen that conversation
Right.
about our
Oh,
own
yeah, yeah.
metrics too, because if we get to April and we're at low transmission and this high percentage of vaccination, and it's, you know, and we're still requiring masks, and yet we're being told the governor can't I don't know. I just think we need. I don't think tonight's the night for that.
Yeah,
but I think we
yeah,
need
no,
I
really
more.
just wanted to like make sure that information
Yeah.
was kind of back out there as like some re-baseline, because we've got new families in the district.
sure.
We've got like people who, I mean, they were 2 years ago when we had those. They were literally members of this board that were not there, right?
Yeah.
At those original conversations. So.
I think it was something we did before this variant came out. We always talked about it, even at that first meeting before the governor put his mandate out, that, you know, yes, this is fluid. And I think we had wishful thinking that it was going to be downtrending since the beginning of the school year, but we've no question about it, we've upticked. But I remember in our discussions that, yes, as things improve, we're always following the guidance. We're going to re-examine if we're ever at a point where, you know, we're not there, where people, you know, massively went out to get vaccinated. You know, I think our numbers are higher, but we're not at that level. We hope to be much better, but, you know, I think it's a little premature to say, okay, now we're in transition and we're going to go to an endemic. That's, you know, our numbers are way higher than we've been still. It's downtrending. We hope that's better. I think we had a very good showing at our vaccination clinic to show that those numbers are there, but, you know, I wasn't someone like, it was like we have to wear a mask all the time until the end of the school year. I think we did say that.
Yeah, we
have
talked
to look
about
at that
having
and
metrics,
re-examine where we are for all of those, even pushing, like, as you guys discussed, and at the health meetings and the superintendent's meetings, like, where are we at and how can we adjust, you know, if at all.
I wouldn't expect the CDC to adjust its metrics based on a Illinois state ruling, judge ruling, but are we expecting the Illinois Department of Public Health and ISBE to, like, do they have, I'm gonna guess that this is on their timeline. I mean, it came up on SACID calls too, so, I mean, I know everybody's eagerly awaiting this judgment. Are they kind of anticipating adjusting their guidelines potentially based on the judgment?
I would anticipate that there would be some guidance coming out for school districts.
It sounds like kind of minimally, if the judge rules just the mandate, just the governor's mandate, that we would be back to like 10 days of quarantine. It sounds like that would be kind of our most minimal situation, if I'm reading this right? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I guess I'm going to recommend that we find out what the ruling is on Friday. Admin, you know, take your time to do what you need to do to gather a recommendation for us. And then in the meantime, you know, maybe this week we can start to look at calendars just in case we need a special board meeting next week to talk about the implications of all of this. Send out like a doodle poll or something for next week. Yeah, we can try to get some time. Because there's a lot to sort of discuss and rediscuss, but I want to make sure we have like a full set of facts.
Right.
To the extent we will have that. Does that make sense to everybody?
And I think an essential part of coming into a special board meeting, if we have it, is like you said, what the bargaining units think, and you know, if what will keep them in the building.
Right.
That's essential.
Yes.
Can you just state too, like, I think to keep in mind as we go into that, the percentage of our staff that's vaccinated? Because I think that plays a part in.
Yeah, the staff is I don't know the exact percentage, but it's less than 20 now.
That are
20 total staff.
20 total staff
Yeah,
members?
Yeah,
members.
that are not fully
that are not
vaccinated.
vaccinated.
And I just say that to say.
Now, the one thing though is boosters. We're just starting to collect booster information.
I bring that up to say that it's different than 2 years ago, that we're dealing with,
Right.
and the question with the bargaining, just with, that we are dealing with unvaccinated and safety with that, but we have some added safety with that number being high, you know,
Right.
different than a student one, but, you know, there's sides to that to
Right.
look at, but it's just a different situation than 2 years ago when it first started.
Definitely.
So.
Definitely.
Great. Any other questions for Kevin on this topic? Okay. So the next item on the agenda is the update on the tax increment financing, the TIF district revenues.
Good evening. I'll give you just a quick little background. One of the board members had asked for that. In 2013, the Village of Westmont was looking to revitalize the downtown central business district area. And one of the mechanisms that they can use is creating a tax increment financing district or TIF district. And what happens with that area is that the EAV is frozen at a certain point in time, and the district can only get tax revenue on that base EAV. So as EAVs increase or new construction happens, that money gets directed to the village to help revitalize the downtown, and eventually, and then we entered into an agreement with the village to receive some of those incremental payments over the life of the TIF, and to then help with Manning School. So Manning School is within the boundaries of the TIF, and so the TIF revenue that the district receives can only be spent on improvements at Manning. So, you know, repairing the structure or internal pieces of the district, of the school. It cannot be used to pay for salaries or benefits or, you know, things like that. So that money can only be used at Manning. And so each year I provide the board with an update of the monies that we receive. So we typically receive a payment at the end of December, beginning of January each year. And so the table that I have in the board book for you shows the payments that we received to date. So we got it, the check was cut in December, and in January we received $136,000 of TIF payments. So our total, and that's over the 8-year period so far, we've received $491,604 versus the projection from the village. So they have someone who works with them to create all the information on the TIF. And so by this point in time, they have projected that we would have received, you know, $4,594,000. So a difference of negative $4.1 million. And then you can also see that the estimated payments for years 9 through 16, so they had estimated that by year 16, we would have received the total of $15 million that was in our original agreement. So anyway, we are quite a ways away from that. But again, we continue to hold that money. That money is in the fund balance for the O&M fund. So we always have to be cognizant that whatever that balance is, now subtract about $500,000 that can't be spent for other things. And so we are going to start looking at seeing, you know, if there's some smaller projects we can maybe start to do. You know, the problem with Manning is just like, you know, kind of any home remodel or something. Once you start to look at one thing, then it leads into 20 others. And so what types of things could we do there that wouldn't it's kind of like throwing good money after, or, you know, bad, so that we don't start and do a project, and then when we have more money, realize that we kind of have to redo that thing. So we're going to start, Joe and I are going to start to look at that and see if there are some projects that we might be able to start to do to at least spend a little bit of that money. Now, I do want to make you aware, the TIF district obviously has developed much slower than the village and the planners anticipated. But we do, just to the east of here, a block is the apartment or condos that are being built. So you will start seeing in the next, I can't even say next year, but probably the year after, should start seeing a little bit more significant income coming in off of the TIF. And again, hopefully that development will start driving further renovation and expansion and rebuilding in the downtown area as well.
Question.
Uh-huh.
These projections are how old?
From 2013.
No one's updated these projections?
The TIF has not updated them, no.
Can we ask them to update the projections?
We can ask them, yeah.
I don't know if they will.
Okay, and are they under any obligation to meet these projections by the end of the 16 years?
No.
No. And so, I believe that as long, this is the projection that at year 16, it would be completed. I don't believe that the payments stop at year 16 if they haven't met the 15 million. So the TIF goes for 23 years, so it expires in 2036.
Yeah,
Is it done at that point that whatever monies you have at that point, if that's it?
When it expires, yes.
But then we can go back to the EAV changes.
Then the EAV, so let's just say that EAV was like 34 million when it started in 2013. And so that's all the tax, we can only get tax money based on that 34 million, okay? But say in 2036, that 34 million is now 250 million. You're going to get tax revenue on the 250 million when the TIF expires. So in that 1 year, you're going to get a big influx of cash in your taxes, and then it will level off after that point.
And that was what year?
2036.
It seems like a long time to me. I don't
reauthorize
the TIF.
Well, the numbers are going up, so that's a good sign.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But I would like to ask them for a reprojection of these numbers. It's been a long time since these original projections. They're clearly not meeting them, and they're not going to. So what do they anticipate? Because we have planning to do.
Mm-hmm. And this money, speaking of that planning, right, this money could potentially be used to expand Manning.
On its current site.
On its current site,
So
as
if
long as it was
you-
still downtown, but it could
So
be part of that
Right.
longer term, not raising taxes on our citizens, no referendum, getting one
Correct.
building that fits K through 5.
Right. But if that wasn't the site and you decided
Yeah.
to have one
Yeah.
K-5 building on the Miller site, you lose this money.
That's
Yeah.
clear as day.
So,
Yeah, but I think to Carlos's point, to have an updated projection on it, now that this building is being built, we know how many units are in it, now that the building over there, I think has been approved, but now that they have a little bit more information on some significant redevelopment.
but I don't know if they even have an idea, what the assessed valuation of that
Mhm.
building is going to be yet.
I would only express to them that I think we understand that we live in it's hard to project anything. I think everyone can understand that. But, even just something that is directionally accurate, we expect it to stay at this level. We expect the levels to continue to increase at the recent rate of increase, because there has been one. Just a general understanding of where they see it going would be good for now. Hard numbers, as we can see here, are fairly meaningless. So
Fair ask.
if they could tell us what they think is going to happen in general terms so that we can plan, that would be helpful.
Any other questions regarding the TIF revenue? Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the PR committee update.
You gonna go, Carlos, or?
So, well, yes,
Okay.
I can go from the meeting. I just, because we do have an update. I'm just curious as to why this is in this part of the meeting and not in just the board updates. I don't know.
We just asked for it to be an agenda item because there were some.
There's some add-ons I have
comments.
after.
Oh, okay, that's
After
what it
what we
is then.
cover in our, yeah.
Is that, do you want to do that first?
No,
or-
you can cover our meeting first, and then I can go into that.
Okay, now I understand. Thanks a lot. Okay, so I just 3 major items to update on from our last PR committee meeting. One is that we're pushing back the dates for some events due to the to COVID concerns. I think we thought at that meeting on the 14th of January, and it's proving itself out that we do see and expect that, this to tail off and hopefully get back to where we can do in-person events a little more comfortably. But those events were originally scheduled for early February, so it just didn't seem to make sense back on the 14th of January, and I think it was a good decision, and I think we all agree. So that means the Blue Ribbon event, the celebration of the Blue Ribbon will probably not take place until early April, and the real estate fair is pushed back to March 4th. So the next big topic that came up was, I didn't know this, I don't know who sitting here knew this, but that we're now we're very close to the 50th anniversary of the school district.
Yeah.
So you knew that?
It's in your CAFR that was presented, that's in that management discussion and analysis, and I let Amy know.
Yeah. So, and Amy brought it up again, and so we're looking to make the next 2022-2023 school year about that 50th anniversary, and I think that there's there are a lot of things we talked about, ideas we talked about, there will be more coming from that. There's a tie-in with a book release that Amy was talking about earlier this evening, so there's a lot of things that we can do, and we're talking about potentially kicking that off. The actual anniversary is on July 3rd, so maybe something around those dates might be the kickoff, but again, something that would last throughout the next school year. And then the last thing we talked about that's worth mentioning here is the use of the 5 Essentials survey as a focus for a couple of things. One, for in community engagement and communication. So the thing that was brought up was that we do the survey, and the survey results are published and all those things, but there's really not a lot of discussion around those results, and that we could survey the community with our own survey, but the 5 Essentials covers everything. It's well thought out, it's well managed and administered, and we would do ourselves a favor to take advantage of the fact that it's out there to do our own community engagement and also to inform strategic priorities. So, yeah.
So, Carlos, just to be clear, do you mean like next time the 5 Essentials is released, we tag on a series of our own survey questions, or are you saying like more promotionally around? Help me understand what you mean.
No, it's not about adding, so it's open now, right?
Right, that's what I was going to say. We missed, the window for this year is here.
No, I don't think, we didn't have any discussion about adding anything on to that,
Okay.
no. It was just about, when the results do come out, engaging both through the board and through the administration, engaging the community more on what the results are, what they mean, what actions are suggested by the results, and using it as just another tool, whether it's strategic planning or whether it's community engagement, using it as another tool to that end.
How is it being, we use it now, right? How is it being used now by the administration?
It's used by the administration. They take a look at it and they get feedback from, parents, staff, and students in terms of, some of it is in terms of the curriculum, some of it is in terms of the climate of school, students feeling comfortable in the building. And so they take a look at that, and then it helps them develop goals for the next year based on that information.
So what would the PR committee like to see done more than that, I guess?
Well, so go ahead.
Basically, we have, not reinventing the wheel. And so we have something that gives us great information, and accessing that and using it to, answer a lot of our questions.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, what I'm hearing is and I think we would probably agree with this, we don't do a great job of connecting the dots. We got this 5 essentials information, we made this change, right? But we never did a great job of communicating how that dot was connected, right? That one of our administrators, Tim, got this feedback on his 5 essentials survey, and because of that, this year we have a makerspace at Miller,
That's
right?
exactly
And that makerspace for Miller was a direct, outcome of feedback received from the community, from our school community, by the 5 essentials survey. Is that what I'm?
That's exactly what you're hearing.
Okay.
And furthermore, there might be a step in between the decision for the makerspace and the outcome, in which there was community involvement in understanding what the outcomes are, what potential actions are suggested by those outcomes, and then again communicating when there are outcomes, when there are actions, that these actions tie back to this. So I think it's the loop you're talking about, but I think there's a step in the middle as well.
This is a real long game situation.
It is.
Correct.
Right?
But it's also going to gauge where we are. We'll be able, presenting that at the meeting, parents don't know where to find these answers, but if we were to have a presentation at a meeting after we get those responses, hey, this is a gauge of where we are and how we've been doing.
Yeah, I can confidently say that as a parent, when I filled out the 5 essentials, especially as a kindergarten parent, I had no idea what I was doing or why I was doing it, right? But I feel like when we talk about PR, right, and we have talked about PR literally since the very first board meeting that I was at, and that we need to be better about it, and we need to be better about communicating to the community and how decisions are made, and especially because we could have conversations that happened a year ago that started a year ago or 2 years ago or 4 years ago or longer, and they've just taken that long to resolve, right? And that piece of it, putting those pieces together. It sounds like this 5 essentials could be something, and one thing that triggered as you were talking about it was that from the board retreats in Chicago, one of the things that the school district called out about strategic planning was that they reviewed it every single year. They reviewed it and they tweaked it. They didn't just this is our strategic plan, right? But they called that their number one most essential thing, was that they reviewed it every year and then they tweaked it based on information. And maybe for us, this is that, and we schedule it in our board meetings. Because we schedule our board meetings for a whole year, right? We know when 5 essentials is going to come out. This is our strategic review session with our 5 essentials, and then we can also, right, talk about that. This is our strategic session, right? This is something that get our parents involved, get our PTOs involved in helping us spread that. And I think maybe that position that we were talking about earlier that might be posted at some point would help with this significantly.
Yeah, so Leah, I think you the word that you've said several times right there is exactly where this conversation needs to go, is the strategic planning committee.
Yeah.
And I think we've maybe had one meeting and I wasn't able to be at that, but that's where we look at 5 essentials plus a boatload of other data. And I think we're still working on that, but I think what I'm hearing is we need to make that more of a priority. Right. Get that updated, communicate on the strategic plan. Here's the data that we use, which includes 5 essentials versus taking 5 essentials in a separate direction and conversation. It's part
As
of
if it were in a
It has to be in the context of.
we need to get on top of the strategic plan, I think is what we're hearing.
Well,
and be a
I
little
should
bit
say
more
return
transparent
to the strategic plan.
Yes.
I would just want to be clear, we've done a lot of work on the strategic plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's been sidelined because of
100%.
COVID and a million other things. So it's more of a return to. Yes.
I'm gonna, based on these comments, I'm gonna reread exactly what I read and see if it makes more sense now. Ready? We're gonna use the 5 essential survey as a focal point for community engagement and communication, and and second bullet point below that, to inform strategic priorities. So yes. I think that what we're trying to say here is there's 2 things. There's the strategic planning and strategic priorities, and using this 5 essentials as a tool or a focal point, not as the end-all be-all, but there is a calendar to it, It is yearly, it's administered, they're gonna hit the targets they set for sending the surveys out and getting the information back. So it's something we can build a process around. But it's, again, furthermore, because it's getting information from so many community members, including students and staff and parents, that it is as all-encompassing a survey as we could possibly run. We don't need to reinvent that. So that's I think what we came here.
Yeah.
The PR committee wanted to make sure we,
And we get fairly good response rate on that.
very good response rate.
And what I'm also
Because the principals and teachers and staff literally spend ridiculous amounts of time making sure they get good response rates.
And the state, and
it's
there's a lot of
mandated.
money around the
Yes.
5 essentials. It's not just, I mean, there's a lot of hoopla about it because it's a big deal,
The response for the state school report card, the minimum, it varies from group to group. So like for your staff, it has to be, I think it's over 70% of your staff. For your students, it's over 50%. For your parents, it's right around 20 to 25%. So those are.
And if we don't meet those numbers, they're not included.
Right,
on our
then it's
report
not
card.
included, then it hurts. If you remember the rating that the State Board of Ed gives your school is impacted by that. if you don't,
by those response rates and
know.
everything.
And a tremendous effort goes into getting those
Our,
response rates.
Yeah.
We have a district leadership team, which is made up of teachers and admin. In our last meeting, we created our SMART goals and action plans for the 5 essentials. So what percent we want for each of those groups for each of our schools, the action plan in order to get those percents.
I feel like what I also am hearing from PR though, and this is something we always hear, is just how we're communicating that to the community, that community engagement piece. So once we are, and this is not a criticism about the strategic plan, because I get we've had just a couple other things that have taken priority over that, but once we kind of feel like we've got a good thing that we can communicate, how are we going to communicate that thing and where and when, and inviting people to hear the presentation about our updated strategic plan and all of that.
And even just reminding people, because what I find is when a process takes a year or more, that people forget how much they were actually engaged in the process.
Right.
And I think so reminding people that there were public strategic planning process meetings, several of them. Things have changed. We'll probably do more when we revisit it again. Just making sure that as we talk about communication, we're even communicating about the process.
I feel like that could be helpful for grade level centers.
I
'cause
definitely
that
think
tremendous
it could be
amount of
helpful for grade
planning
level
and
centers. Like, let's
community engagement
remind
happens with
everybody
that,
what the
so,
process was here that took a year plus.
Yes.
And several meetings were
2
held
years
both
plus.
with the public and with the board, and lots of discussion. I think communications widely, not just about results and actions, but about reminders about the process. And better communication about when people can engage and how to engage, I think is really important.
And if I could just jump in on communication and reiterate something that will be repetitive, but because I know that we've got new folks watching tonight, and just to repeat that, like, the board cannot do the public relations. It is two on the dance floor for us. It is not our position. And it is not an appropriate position for us to do the PR for that.
Exactly, it's important that it's a conflict.
Yes, it is a conflict.
Not just not our position.
Our board president is the spokesperson for the board. Mr. Carey is the spokesperson for the administration. And technically, we don't have a PR position right now.
Something we've been pushing numerous times.
Been working on it
again and again.
We had a couple things, couple COVID-y type things get in the way, but we don't have a PR position right now. But the public relations role in our district is our principals. And so the communication from our principals is the public relations arm. And that is the place to go to with kind of very direct questions about how things have happened historically, because we can't answer and we cannot speak as a board in that way, because it is a conflict for us to be PR people. And we are in the process of solving that conflict, thankfully, wonderfully. Yes.
So I agree with you totally, and that's a great clarification, because I was going to ask the question, Carlos, just to make sure you're saying, when we talk about doing these things, we're not talking about the board doing these things, we're talking about the district doing these things.
No, but again, like the presentation of the 5 essentials results coming to the board and there being a board discussion about those results.
Absolutely.
That's what we're talking about.
Absolutely. And I just to build on what Leah said, it's the principals, but it's also Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey does quite a bit of communication to parents and the community on a regular basis about district-wide events. So,
did you have more? Awesome. So the reason it's on this part of the message is some things that I brought to the attention of Mr. Carey and Laura, and especially since Kevin missed out on our last PR meeting. So I wanted to bring them again to the attention. Once again, in my session at the conference, I had a PR session. It is an investment. It is an investment in the community. It's what we're getting from the community, giving back into the community. I have been on the PR bus for years now, pushing in all the other committees I've been in that we need this role. Very essential, and yeah, budget things happen, things get cut, it can happen, but hopefully we can head on another direction. I also wanted to bring up policy number 8-10. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't gone through every single policy since I've been sitting on this board. Life, you don't read everything.
You're a volunteer, dear.
Yes, absolutely.
So, like,
there's other essential things that I legally have to finish in this volunteer role before I can sit and read every last policy member. But it was very eye-opening in the same aspect. We have in our PR meetings discussed getting the quarterly newsletter back. We just have to go and look, same thing, budget, all that. Ideas suggested to Mr. Carey. The only other thing aside from all of this, looking at this and like press releases and items like that, we are on the timeline of starting for next year. We got that at the last meeting about how we're gonna look at how next year is gonna be laid out with staffing, all of this. Essentially, our new year starts now. It's like a fiscal year, especially our new year starts now. Let's get the GLCs into that Westmont Neighbors Quarterly. Can we get into any of the patches online? I know it says Westmont has a patch, but it is very uneventful.
I think that's like technically because we have a zip code.
Right, I think that's all that is.
I think that is like how patch is set up.
Right,
Literally by
it's
zip
just,
code.
you have it, it's uneventful, but things I've seen in the Clarendon Hills, Hinsdale one, or the Downers, even if we can get the information to those, since there are active, I'm assuming active journalists that are updating those, I'm pretty sure a majority of our town reads those as well. Like if we could possibly push and get some of our information out there, hey, we had a new hire, oh, hey, we, you know, we had this. I mean, I saw that they posted the new superintendent's pay raise over on the Hinsdale one. I'm like, odd flex, but I understand the transparency. Just pushing to get us in that directions to make the corrections for the budget cuts we've had in the past and just heading that way.
And we have some job postings that are going to be coming up for a variety of positions.
It's that timeline. Our new fiscal year is starting. So, yeah, those are the things I wanted to bring up.
I mean, I think what we can do, we should do with the limited resources we have. But I know, like, basically, Kevin's our PR committee, and so, like, or our PR person as an extension of his, and I'm only saying that because it's added to the 9 million things that you already have to do. So I want to just make sure we prioritize what we think is really, really critical to communicate via media relations versus via the community outreach methods that we have. I think we're hearing some feedback that some of the community outreach methods that we have in place maybe aren't reaching everybody. Maybe
we want to get that newsletter back in play.
And right, and so like, what are the other outreach methods that we should use, and is that the media like the patch? I just want to make sure we're thinking about like what's really important for us to communicate and then what's going to be meaningful. Because
Yes.
I'd hate to have Kevin spend time working on a quarterly newsletter, and then that also falls on deaf ears.
Right.
Or it doesn't reach the people it needs to reach.
And I think we're coming back full circle of we need manpower, we need somebody to
Right.
do this.
Right.
It's not us. Kevin has got a full plate, so
Push
I think
that
we need to
button,
we need to
role.
keep on revisiting who's really going to be in charge of that, and in the interim, continue to communicate in the many wonderful channels that we have been. I don't want to dismiss how we have been communicating,
Absolutely.
but I think if we're going to look at a relationship with a publication, that becomes a whole nother job, and along with other PR stuff. So
And I think for the board, we have to remember and this is for us, like we are not, like we said that already, we can't hold that position, but what we're gonna have to make a decision about is the budget. Like we have a commitment and we can say that this is an investment, but pen to paper, what are we going to do or apply or pay for this position? What are we willing to pay? And by that means, what are we willing to cut? So, because that's the thing, but that's the big job we have to do, and I just want to remind us as a board that that's our big decision. Of course,
I mean,
I love
hopefully
it,
we
I
can-
want it, but we have to think about that piece
We can work
also.
something out. What was the proposition a couple years back before COVID was the athletic director and the PR position? I mean,
Yes.
hopefully
We were trying
something-
everything.
Something can work out.
We're getting pretty creative.
Yes. So, yeah, that's coverage on that.
All right. Any more discussion there? Thank you, PR committee, and thanks, Ange, for bringing that up. I also want to say as a side note, I think it would be good for us to, at some point, review some of the board policies. Because when I have read through them recently, there are some that are outdated in their language. And, I think that's not.
I remember in previous meetings that
good,
there was an
obviously.
adjustment to policy. Is that the policy committee, the same ones that do the school books? Are they the ones that cover that, or is the board policy different?
The board policy, we have a board policy committee, which I'll be setting up a meeting for. But Laura's aware of this. It wasn't too long ago, the policy committee went through each section of the policy book and compared it to what, best practice was and brought forth. In some cases, we eliminated some policies.
Yeah, I remember that meeting.
Others, we tweaked some that we had.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
we can go through that process again.
Right. I mean, like Ange said, right, it's the beginning of our year. It's really, ultimately, we're planning for next school year.
Yeah.
One of the best things that we can do in order not to be like a kind of rubber stampy type board is to get committees working effectively and committees reporting in on these items, right? This is not work to be done at the board table here. It's work to be done as part of the open, publicly open committee meetings, and then brought to the board as like tweak. Because, we have a lot of updating to do. Yeah.
On that note, if there are any parents that want to join the PR committee, please reach out to Amy.
PR, policy, facilities, and finance, right? All of them.
Strategic planning.
Strategic planning, yes.
Okay, great discussion, thank you. The next item on the agenda is masks at co-curricular events. And so I asked for this item to be put on the agenda, and I realized that, Friday could change everything, and, but assuming that masks are gonna be required at co-curricular events, I just wanted to bring up the question to Kevin and also for discussion at the board table of how the board can support staff and administration when they are charged with enforcing those mask policies for spectators at co-curricular events. I have been in attendance at a couple of different events over the past several weeks where staff in particular was put in very uncomfortable positions with spectators from our hometown who refused to wear a mask in a crowded gymnasium. When asked to put the mask on, they, became belligerent with the person trying to get them more than one time, multiple events over the past couple of weeks. First of all, conversation amongst the board members of what's our role in that situation if we witness something like that. Is it our role to intervene? Is it our role to get the principal involved? Like, how do we handle that? I just wanted to have that conversation at the board table. And then I also wanted to just ask Kevin, how do we better support staff in those situations? Because I think it's extremely not only unfair to the staff who are being put in those situations, but also I could see very easily how a situation like that could escalate, and without the right measures in place to back up the actions of the staff person, I would hate to see something sort of get out of control.
And
so
I will share too that I've been at events where actually called out like, hey, we have a board member here. So that, ask you like that role that we play. But more concerning to me, we're trying to teach our children that there are guidelines, there are rules. There is a place to say, I don't like this rule. What can we do about it? We have administrators, we have, a superintendent, we have our email that we could accept from visitors, parents, community members. But at that time, one thing I did do was ask for respect for that person. They weren't there to have a debate on mask and not mask. They were there to make sure everyone was safe, and they were asked to do a job. And so, that's something that I kind of felt for. I wasn't even trying to be guard for the mask. It was just, saying that let's respect this person who's just asking and just doing their job. But I also felt bad for them that they had to do that job at that point because it wasn't fair to them also. Yeah. I do have like a suggestion or, for that role, because I think this is the rule. We all have to follow. I want parents at these events to see their children, because last year, not too long ago, it was only by Zoom that a parent could watch their child play in the sport that they love. And so I want my parents to be there. I want the children to play. And if this is the way we could do it for now until rules change, this is what we need to do. But I don't know. I saw at one school where it was the person on the mic, the announcer, who had a very strong voice and said, this is the rule, this is what we're doing. And if people cannot, we ask that you step away. If not, we have to stop the game. And so that takes, a staff member out of that. I don't know if that's, but at that school, I could appreciate it. It was a loud, booming voice, and everybody's there because they want to see their children play, so.
On that note, I know we're gonna speak further on this in a little bit. With the aggressing towards the people asking for to wear masks, doesn't that fall under policy 830?
It does. That's what I'm looking at right now.
Yeah.
So it says violate other district policies or regulations or a directive from an authorized security officer or district employee. So those people are out. If they don't want to follow, I think we can follow the same protocol. That's the policy, period.
And so in the moment, I guess the question is, if you ask a person to leave and they don't, what do the people do in that situation? I mean, obviously, then it can be escalated and reported.
But I think it's a little bit of what Adina said, that, at the start of every athletic event, they read a sportsmanship, passage reminding, fans how they're supposed to support their team, but not in the appropriate way. Well, we can also add that masks are required if you, otherwise we'll stop the game. As a board member, you should alert the administrator, let them intervene, in the whatever's occurring. And then I think it does come down to, whoever's supervising the athletic event, approaching the person, reminding them of the mask policy, and then it's either stopping the game if they fail to, or if we need to, we contact Westmont Police Department, and they come in, and I'm very quickly able to de-escalate at that point, and then they're escorted out of the gym. And then if we need to, have a hearing, regarding that person and whether or not they're allowed to continue to attend athletic events, then we would take that step.
I know that, so we have our community officers that are very busy, but, if that's, I hate to use them for this when we can all participate, but if that's what we have to do, it's done.
For now.
For now.
And I
Just for
hate
now.
to add more to everybody's plate, because, always. Is it a possibility, I know we have signs on the doors of the schools, you must have a mask, enter, just another plastic sleeve and you pop in, board policy 8:30, right during the games. Is that a possibility?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that, and I also think stronger language could be on the signs. I think the signs say something like face masks required, but it should, I would prefer it say you will be asked to leave, or something that makes it very clear. If you cannot abide by this policy, you will be asked to leave. So that, I think anything we can give those monitors to stand behind while they are trying to enforce these policies. And I would say the same about any policy. It's not about masks specifically, but this is specifically the policy I'm seeing being violated on the regular, and also putting staff and other community members in a very awkward situation.
And unfortunately, that's just our society right now and our
Absolutely.
culture after these couple of years. If anybody's traveled recently, people are
Absolutely.
angry and ready to, unfortunately. So, I'd like to think that we're better than that here in this community, and we can get through this a little bit. And I think also just asking for people to be polite and courteous.
Absolutely.
And what you need to do so the kids can play their games.
Absolutely. I think that's the bottom line,
Yeah.
is we all want to be able to watch our kids
Yeah.
play, and we don't want a situation that, or kids sing, or whatever the situation might be.
The Westmont Junior High School presentation made it clear that's what we're teaching. Work hard and be kind. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. We have a couple of action items. We'll move to those. The first is the approval of emergency days. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the resolution to adopt an e-learning program in lieu of the district's scheduled emergency days as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Yes?
Ms. Steckity?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Yes.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Okay, motion approved. The second is the approval to deny access to school events per board policy 8-30. The chair will entertain a motion to deny Mr. Delippi admission to all home and away athletic events through the end of the 2021-2022 school year per board policy 8-30.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, before we go to roll call, are there any comments, further comments about this before we vote?
I would just like to reference the policy once again. It is clear in nature on here that there are accounts of how to assess the word assault, but it is clear in nature on here that this was violated. So that is how I am basing my vote today.
I'd just like to make a statement that I appreciate Dr. Reck and Ms. Kaplan coming in to give their statement. There are some things I wasn't aware of, and I think that something that stands out was that there was a meeting and a request was made, and clearly that wasn't accepted or acknowledged, and I thought that was very fair. And so that stands out, that was also in, most importantly, the policy was not applied at that time, but this request wasn't, which I thought was very fair. That being said, I want to make full disclosure that I do have a student that's involved in that team, and I will abstain just because of my closeness to the situation, but I, appreciate their words and their statements, so thank you.
There has been history of previous kind of antagonistic behavior in this instance, not just this specific time, and that is how I'll be basing my vote on the historical and then also this. And it is a fine line of perception of being violent or inhospitable. And unfortunately, you know, if you were perceived as being potentially violent, that can be incredibly terrifying, and nobody should have to feel that way. We should explore all amongst ourselves, right? What would make somebody feel that way or perceive that way, but my vote will be based on the history there and the, you just can't touch somebody.
Yeah, my vote will be based upon, you know, there was witnesses that saw his action. He stated he had a witness, but he didn't present the witness, so not much you can do then.
Yep.
I just-
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
sorry, I just want to say that I'll be basing my vote on the fact that I wasn't able to attend the public portion, the public hearing part of this, so.
I'll be basing mine on violation of Board Policy 8.3.
Agreed. I also want to state that it was clear from the testimony that hands were laid either way, and that the staff member in question does not feel safe. And so that is a part of our job per Board Policy 8-30. Any other comments?
Just that I think it's so important to read this part of the policy that talks about behaving in an unsportsmanlike manner, harassing, threatening, even if hands aren't involved. Those are unacceptable behaviors per the board policy. So I think that's important, especially as we're talking about standards we're setting for our children in this district.
100%. Very good point, Jess. Thank you. Okay. We have a motion, so roll call, please.
Ms. Redonio?
Yes.
Ms. Coyle?
Yes.
Mr. Avia?
Abstain.
Ms. Deckety?
Yes.
Ms. Hoover?
Abstain.
Mr. Marin?
Yes.
Ms. Conover?
Yes.
Okay. Motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
So a couple items in my report. We've already referenced the fact that we are in the planning phase for our 22-23 school year. And the incoming registration for kindergarten students will take place at Miller Elementary School beginning Wednesday, March 23rd through Thursday, April 14th. And 201 offers a full-day kindergarten program at Miller as well as a full-day bilingual kindergarten program. The state law requires that a child must be 5 years of age on or before September 1st, 2022. In order to be admitted to kindergarten, we must have a notarized copy of your child's birth certificate with the embossed seal. Hospital birth certificates are not acceptable. And if those dates don't work for somebody, they can reach out to Miller office and they'll schedule an appointment to register your child. And then the other, we mentioned this several times this evening as well, but the 5 Essentials survey is open, and we're encouraging our parents to complete that survey. And we do use that data to guide our decision-making, and the survey will close on March 11th, 2022.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Any board reports tonight?
I have a dual SACID meeting tomorrow night, so I do expect to have a SACID board report at the next meeting. SACID works a little bit differently than us in that there is a board of control and a separate board. And so when we have the dual meetings, they're typically pretty big. So I will have some information from SACID at our next board meeting for sure.
Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else? Board reports? Okay. Is there any public comment?
New card for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me know if I'm good to go.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make it quick. Hi all again. Thank you for your time. Haven't seen you guys in a minute. Just wanted to talk real quick about kindergarten based on what was just stated there. Just want to make sure and ask for clarity for either a future meeting, or I'll talk a little bit more about the PR. Thank you for that. But particularly about kindergarten, I've heard that from Mr. Carey just now that it's either full day or full day bilingual at Miller. I want to ask specifically about half-day kindergarten and if that is also an option. My understanding is Illinois state law that says that the board may establish a kindergarten with half-day attendance or with full-day attendance. If the board establishes full-day kindergarten, it shall also establish half-day kindergarten. So just ensuring and understanding that that is an option for parents at Miller, now that Miller is the only kindergarten option in District 201. Now the grade level center is the only path forward. So just wanted to understand that, and the statute on that is Illinois compiled statute that is 105/5/10-22.18 from chapter 122, paragraph 10 through 22.18. So that's where that's at. Just again, want clarity for that for the future, to understand what are the options that parents have. I don't know if that was just an omission or if it was a something that has been changed. So then just briefly, wanted to thank the committee meeting the PR committee for mentioning GLCs and how we can get that out there. It was also informative to know that the board itself doesn't issue PRs. It is in fact the board president as well as the superintendent. So I would ask that if policies are important, and we just heard how policies are important and should be followed to the letter, that the board and the board president and the superintendent follow the policy set forth for the board to communicate with the community so we can know what happened and understand based on that. The stakeholders of the community are the parents, the teachers, the students, everybody. We just want to know what happened so there's not just a rubber stamp, so that just asking to follow policies. We heard how policies are very important. And we just heard based on that policy vote that the reasons for those decisions made by the board members, which was wonderful. I would just hope that we'd have the same level of transparency and communication moving forward. So again, thank you for your time.
Okay, future meetings and events. There will be a vaccination clinic hosted by Westmont Pharmacy on January 29th, 2022 from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Westmont Junior High School. There will also be our next board meeting on February 8th at 6 p.m. at Westmont Village Hall. And we have concluded closed session. So we move to adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion adjourned.